by coincidence, on the day that it was announced Netflix is buying Warner Brothers, I got an email about this little chap. Now, this is George. This is George. And I have to take pet insurance for George because he eats everything. Look at him. He'd eat Kermit the Frog given the chance. And it's the email said, at Pet Health Club, we're committed to providing your pet, George, with the highest quality of preventative healthcare. There you go, George. High quality preventative healthcare. Take a look there. To keep delivering the high standard of care, we need to make a small adjustment to the cost of George's plan. That, folks, is exactly the same language that you find in announcements of major corporate takeovers, and now it's trickled down. It all affects us in the end. In this case, they're using the same language to get another £1 a month off me for George. George, what do you think? I agree. Bloody hell, get off the mic. Let's go through the Netflix and Warner Brothers deal and just some of the talking points that have come out of it. Okay, I've just had to go and feed George. I think by now most of you know the story of what's going on. Netflix has agreed a deal to buy the Warner Brothers film and streaming businesses for $72 billion, the kind of monopoly money at the top of the entertainment world that those of us at the bottom never see. This is, I mean, it is a massive deal, And Warner Brothers has beaten out competition from Paramount Skydance, as they're now called, and also Comcast. Netflix is owning one of the classic movie studios should this go through. Now, there are a lot of hurdles to go through yet, so we'll go through those in a second. But let's just state up front. Go back to that pet healthcare thing. There's going to be a small adjustment to the cost of George's plan. George is now eating his dinner. Netflix estimates, goes a BBC report, it will find $2 to $3 billion in savings. What do we think that means? Savings means this is yet another deal, as we saw with Disney buying Fox, also to a lesser extent with Amazon buying MGM, where the people at the bottom lose their jobs to keep the people at the top rich. I mean, David Zaslav, the much not loved head of Warner Brothers Discovery, gets an 8-9 figure pay packet, will get immensely rich. He and a bunch of other people get immensely rich off the back of this deal. Meanwhile, down at the bottom, thousands of people are fearing for their jobs. That is the cost of modern entertainment business. I am powerless to do anything about it, but I'm buggered if I'm not going to acknowledge it. $2 to $3 billion in savings means job losses, and it means a lot of job losses. Countering the tone of that, I, like many of you, got an email. I'm a Netflix subscriber at the moment. I got an email from, and also, this is at a point where Netflix is making films with filmmakers who otherwise aren't getting the budget still to do their films. I mean, Jay Kelly's just coming out, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, and a whole bunch of really interesting films, in fairness. So I do want to note that I think Netflix has made some really significant contributions to modern cinema with the films that it's backed that no one else would. Less so something like Red Notice, but that's like the gig of your multiplex, isn't it? So the email I got from Netflix read, we've recently announced that Netflix will acquire Warner Brothers. Yep, I agree, you have. Including its film and television studios, HBO Max and HBO. So this is important. So Warner Brothers is actually a company called Warner Brothers Discovery, but it is in the process of demerging. Warner Brothers has a history of unsuccessful mergers. Do you remember the AOL one? When an emerging tech giant looked to take the dominant role over Warner Brothers, didn't work well at all. So there's a little bit of tippy-toe here. Warner Brothers and Discovery are demerging. A lot of the legacy television-y stuff and cable stuff goes with Discovery, as I understand it. Paramount Skydance was going to buy the lot. Everyone else was only interested in this bit, the film and TV studios, basically, and the streaming service. So what Netflix is buying, the television studio, the film studio, HBO Max streaming service, ironically only just about to launch in the UK next year, and HBO. This, they enthusiastically write, unites our leading entertainment service. That would be the Netflix streaming service. I mean, you can't argue with that. It is the leading streaming service, with Warner Brothers' iconic stories, bringing some of the world's most beloved franchises like Harry Potter, Friends, The Big Bang Theory, Casablanca, thank God they put a classic film in there, Game of Thrones, and the DC universe together with Stranger Things, Wednesday, Squid Game, Bridgerton, and K-pop Demon Hunters. That's an announcement written very much with contemporary tastes in mind. They know they're always audience. They know what they've got, the data to back it up. They know what they're going for. As much as I sit there and just think, oh, there's a whole bunch of amazing films over the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s that you've just glossed over. I get it. It's just like a paragraph announcement to us as subscribers telling us it's all going to be great. What's changing? Nothing is changing today. Well, you ain't kidding there. Both streaming services, Netflix, HBO Max, will continue to operate separately. We have more steps to complete before the deal is closed. That is a sentence which is at the heart of a lot of the issue here, including regulatory and shareholder approvals. They're not going to struggle too much with shareholder approvals. Regulatory, whole different thing. You'll hear from us when we have more to share. In the meantime, we hope you'll continue to enjoy watching as much as you want, whenever you want, all on your current membership plan, neatly sidestepping the bit that inevitably the price of that plan is going to have to go up to pay for a $72 billion merger. Who in the end do you think is actually going to pay the bill for that? Do you think it's David Zaslav? Do you think it's like investment bankers at the top? No, it will be passed to us as subscribers. You watch the price rises continue to trickle up on streaming services. They've got to find $72 billion. They'll have some of it. They won't have all of it. We're footing the bill. We know you might have questions, they say. Yeah, I've got questions. Check out our help centre. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Thank you for choosing Netflix. We're committed to bringing you more great series, films, games and live programming. Fair enough. They do a lot of really good stuff in television, film. I've not really done the games, but I've seen what they're doing there. Live programming is a big thing for them now. Completely get that. So that's a fairly standard, uncontroversial email that they've sent. However, it's what's bubbling under the surface and the unanswered questions and the fears in the background. I do think they're worth talking about. Notably, in the midst of the bidding war, really, there was a conversation about, you've got these three bidders, that Comcast, which owns Universal Studios. Now, Universal is a studio that continues to put 15, 20 films in cinemas every year. Arguably, it's Universal and Sony the most committed to a proper cinema release across a breadth of material at the moment. And so, there was a fear that. So you've got Universal there. Paramount Skydance. Well, Paramount's apparently going to up its theatrical release slate and put more, double the amount of films that it's currently putting into cinemas. Okay, great. Interestingly, Amazon is doing that as well with its MGM films. It's looking to put 15 to 20 films into cinemas. It's kind of a reversal of the trend that I'd suggest Netflix started. So it was interesting while all this was playing out that a lot of filmmakers were, I think James Cameron was one, would just say Netflix is the worst option for those who care about cinema. The problem we've got, and I love cinema, cinema is my heart. The problem here is cinema isn't the heart of this deal. This is the big money, and let's face it, they're chasing the money, is in a streaming subscription, a reliable streaming subscription where it doesn't matter if you send out a 5-star masterpiece, 1-star piece of shit, you're going to get your direct debit subscription through the bank. Far less risky to do it that way. There was, though, Ted Sarandos, the co-CEO of Netflix, which was, let's face it, 15 years ago, sending out DVDs by post. I mean, that's how quickly this world can change. Has not exactly enamoured himself to fans of cinema. Rian Johnson's believed to be dissatisfied over the theatrical treatment of his 2 Knives Out films that he's made for Netflix. Conversely, he took an awful lot of money to make the films for Netflix, so sort of must have known a bit of what he was walking into. Greta Gerwig, it was a big sticking point that for her Narnia films that nearly led to them, we're told, falling apart. That a theatrical release was key. There are certain filmmakers who can demand a theatrical release of Netflix, but Ted Sarandos is just like has been very insistent. They're not in it for the cinema business. That they want their customers watching stuff on their platform. They don't give two hoots about a cinema. And as much as noises were made during the purchase and bidding process, Netflix is no guardian of the traditional cinema. I believe the word is disruptor. I love disruptor. I have other words which aren't disruptor, but let's not go there. So the fear was Netflix buys Warner Brothers and then just turns it into a factory for Netflix streaming service. Netflix was insistent it was going to honour theatrical releases. The sort of walkback took place within 24 hours. I don't know if you saw this quote come out. That within 24 hours of the announcement coming out, Ted Sarandos' tune had just changed just a little bit. Not completely, enough to stay within the tram lines of what he'd said before, but the angling just starting to turn. I wouldn't look at this as a change in approach for Netflix movies or for Warner movies, he said. I think over time, the windows theatrical release windows he's on about will evolve to be much more consumer friendly to be able to meet the audience where they are quicker. I'd say right now you should count on everything that's planned on going to the theatre, cinema, through Warner Brothers will continue to go to the theatres, cinemas, through Warner Brothers, and Netflix movies will take the same strides they have, which is some of them do have a short run in the theatre cinema beforehand. But our primary goal, he says, and this is in relation to the merger, our primary goal is to bring first-run movies to our members because that's what they're looking for. It's written there. It's right. That is it. And as much as you say the right noises while you're trying to buy the thing, within a day of this deal being announced, just a slight backstep, isn't it? And let's call it how it'll be. This is how I think it will pan out. That assuming this deal goes through, no given, but some version of it I'd imagine will. Assuming it goes through, for the first year or two, I think Netflix will be an excellent steward of Warner Brothers Discovery. Well, Warner Brothers, not Discovery. And I think it will run films through cinemas with the same theatrical release, and we'll get physical media releases and stuff like that. All it's going to take is a bad quarterly report, like 2 years in. It's just like, oh, we're going to have to make, hang on, what did they say about my cat? We're going to have to make a small adjustment. That's what it'll be, a small adjustment. And I think there is a version of this deal that sees within 5 years, and my gut feeling is this is probably where it's going. Theatrical releases for Warner Brothers will be down slightly. Theatrical windows will be measured in days rather than weeks and months. A physical media release, I wouldn't take that as a given at all. I think on the film side, where I think the film side, it's ultimately going to be a factory of sorts for the Netflix streaming service. That would be my gut feeling. I think that's ultimately, no matter what he's saying in public, and it's not far from what he's saying, to be fair, what Ted Sarandos wants, what Netflix want. That is their goal. That is their goal. If it destroys cinema on the way, doesn't matter. It pays for a really nice house and like makes us billions in profit. So who cares? You know, who cares? I care, Ted. But look at me. I'm not like an 18-year-old, believe it or not. I mean, I'm just someone who buys tons of discs, tons of old magazines. I'm not the audience. I know I'm not the audience. I'm just the person who thinks, well, I just want to watch really good stuff at the cinema. I think cinemas, the theatrical business, also have to be ready for this, because I think the model isn't right for cinemas at the moment for a major studio to effectively be taken off the table. In 2018, 2019, when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, the 20th Century Fox studio, as part of the acquisition of 21st Century Fox, took 15 to 20 theatrical releases off the table. All of a sudden, gaps in the cinema schedule. In the UK, Entertainment One was taken over by Hasbro. The theatrical release division shut down. Not of interest to us. Doesn't make us billions. We need billions. Billions. Doesn't make us billions. Shut down. Took 15 odd releases off the UK release schedule. And, you know, what we're left with is a cinema model, certainly at the multiplex end, that has been built around Marvel movies to a degree, really. The expectation that there's a big blockbuster around the corner, which means we can jack up our prices because people will go and see it. We can charge you a fortune for all the tap that you get while you're there because people will, it's a captive audience, you'll get it. The blockbusters are being removed. The number of blockbusters is coming down at cinemas, and cinemas have adapted the model, because in the end we pay. You see a budget. There's a story going around: Avatar, Fire, and what's it face? It's costing $400 million. Who in the end is going to pay for that? It's the ticket prices go up and up and up. Every time you see a really expensive movie, it's just, oh, that's a good. I'm spending $250 million on that. Who do you think's going to pay the bill? It's us. The ticket prices will creep up. I don't think if you're taking Warner Brothers films out of cinemas, and I know it's not going to happen instantly, but you can. The cinemas are going to need the mid-range stuff, the indie stuff, and have fewer tent poles in them. And the price mechanic of the cinema has to change. We cannot have ticket prices for the cinema that are at the lower end of a good theatre. The whole point, well, not the whole point, but one of the key things for me growing up as a film lover was I could go to the cinema for a couple of quid. It was one of the few like night out art forms I could afford to do. Now it's like when you're spending, assuming you smuggle your sweets in like most of us do, or like smuggle something in, it's still 10 quid. It's still 20 quid in certain parts of the country just to get sat on a seat. And that model can't hold if you are stripping more and more of the big films. There has to be a pricing structure that works, that reflects a broader range of material that's going to be needed to fill these gaps in cinema. Look at the number of re-releases. I love these sing-along screenings. I don't love those. Live beamings of like theatre shows and stuff like that. I love that. It's making stuff accessible and a bit more affordable. If you are, I mean, it's a very, very tricky moment for cinemas, I think, and hopefully other studios will look at that and think there's an opportunity there for us to plug the gap to a degree. If Netflix had owned Warner Brothers a few years ago, what would have happened with Barbie? I mean, it's worth thinking about. Would Netflix have backed it and created $1 billion phenomenon through a terrific marketing campaign? Would it have worked in the same way? I just doubt it. I might be wrong. And also, I think this deal gets judged 5 years after it's bedded in, not in the first year, where I mean, it's not going to be dissimilar to how Amazon treats James Bond. I think that I think the first 1 or 2 films, they're going to be very reverential. As it goes on, that's where I expect the spin-offs and stuff like that. I might be wrong, but I think that the general policy of big companies is don't piss consumers off early. You just do the salami slice. You just change things bit by bit by bit by bit until you've actually got what you wanted anyway, but you weren't saying at the time of purchase. I don't think that's cynicism. I just think that's sort of how the world works. The big elephant in the room, the other big elephant in the room is, will this happen at all? So inevitably, there's been pushback of unions and guilds about, you can smell the job losses coming, and also fewer big productions. All of this stuff, all of these alarm bells are clanging, and rightly so. But also, this isn't a normal world. That ordinarily, just take in America, the regulatory approval required, it would be a fairly mechanical process. You know, is there a monopoly? Well, clearly there will be, in my view, in the streaming service. I would imagine that Netflix may have to divest parts of HBO Max or something. I don't know. Something will need to be altered there to get that through. The movie studio, I don't think will be a problem, because Netflix doesn't actually own a physical movie studio in the traditional sense. But the current state of the White House, let's go as politics free as possible, is unusual. And I would suggest there's a very egotistical, not very clever man sat in the chair in the White House who needs these things to serve him. And there is no way on earth he's not shoving his heavily make-up hooter into the middle of this deal. He's not going to make him, he's just going to make himself the centre of it. And so presumably at some point someone has to give compensation for something they've not done wrong, but you just sort of have to kiss the ring a little bit to get that. Look at what happened with Paramount Skydance to get that deal through. It's just like, yeah, you're right, have a bit of cash, we get what we want anyway, buff your ego, pay for some more orange makeup, that kind of stuff. Something there is like an unpredictable, well, actually it's predictably unpredictable, the element at the heart of this. If he decides, the current US president, that he doesn't like something about this, and he's got 3 more years in office, so this is happening on his watch, then that could cause a problem and is likely to extract a concession. You know, perhaps Brett Ratner's documentary about his wife will turn up on it. I don't know. Something is going to happen there. And at the very least, I'd imagine it will hold things up. This is still also an 18-month process. I mean, it's assumed it's a tick box that the shareholders will approve the deal. Shareholders of Warner Brothers Discovery. I'm sure the shares in the company are held by people who care totally for the arts and will put those above the desire to line their own pockets and make themselves richer. So that's reassuring as well. But I think also in terms of shareholder approval, I don't think Paramount Skydance are entirely out of this. I think they could still make a more aggressive deal and pitch direct to shareholders. Can't imagine it's going to be massively successful. But again, it just holds things up a little bit more. So this may yet be 18 months, 2 years before it's locked down. Warner Brothers and Discovery have to formally demerge. That can't happen until like the second half of next year, I think. And so the earliest I could imagine this would get through, if everyone ticked every box fast, is about 12 months from now. A lot can happen in that time. The ultimate question, will this deal happen? Yes, would be my guess. Some version of it will happen with some concessions and with some ring kissing. There's an image for you. Final question for now. Is this the end of the world? No, it isn't. But as as a slightly older lover of film, it's not a good day for me. Um, but we've sort of been through these before a little bit. I mean, go back to that Warner Brothers AOL deal, where what's feared and what actually happens doesn't always correlate. Sadly, Disney Fox, what feared and what happened, pretty much exactly correlated. I walk past the old Fox building in London from time to time. It always makes me feel really, really sad. That used to be a building bustling with people who cared about film and TV. Now it's just boarded up. There's a security company in there to stop people going in and like nicking some stuff off the walls, don't know. So it's not the end of the world, but it is a very, very difficult challenge. And I think for the traditional cinema theatrical business, the exhibitors, those who still care about it, need to be acting now. You have to react now. And it can't be jacking your ticket prices up even more. You've got to get smarter. You've got to get cleverer. Find different ways. I know that there are companies doing this. I understand that. But find ways to lure us in and keep us in. Broaden what you're showing. Make it more affordable while also paying your rent. I get it. I don't have your spreadsheets. But that if we are still in 5 years looking at a cinema landscape where 70% of cinemas, multiplexes are worshipping at the altar of the blockbuster movie, the business is in real trouble. Real trouble. Look at what's happening with Wicked for Good at the moment. It's making a ton of money and it's going to be on video on demand within a week or two. Within a month of its release, it's almost certain. There are alarm bells everywhere. And Ted Sarandos doesn't care about you. I respect the fact he's pretty much upfront about that. He's not your answer. Okay. There's a whole bunch of people who really care about cinemas, but there is a battle here. Not the end of the world, but I would imagine in 5-10 years' time, on this current trajectory, the cinemas will be in a different place and a slightly rarer beast than they are now. I can't pretend I'm upbeat about this. I think in the end, major mergers and big takeovers serve the rich people at the top to the detriment usually of the audience, of the price we pay, and the people who do a lot of the work on the ground floor of these companies. But there is a long way to go. There's a lot of very scary headlines and panic stations and stuff like that, some of which may come true. I feel a bit sad about it. Really? I can't pretend otherwise, but I do think cinema has survived, 130 odd years so far. There's enough people in its corner, but bloody hell, got a fight on their hands. George is all right, by the way. He's just finished his dinner.